And we're live and on the air. And this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout.
Just
Already we're having fun with Dale.
sorry.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. I'm Ed Dyer, as you can see, from my lower thirds. The only way I can remember my name. And joining me is Dale from Canada.
I'm drinking Innis and Gun, if you've heard of that.
Guinness and Gun?
Innis and Gun. I-N-N.
I-N-N. Okay.
Yeah. Very good beer.
And Dale, you had two celebrations, perhaps near the same day. Ah, there we go.
Oh, that looks good.
What is that?
Undercover.
This
Undercover.
is Lagunitas Undercover Investigation Shutdown Ale. The story behind it apparently was that they were hotboxing, I think is the term, one of the brew kettles, and apparently that got them in some trouble. So this is the Lagunitas Undercover Investigation Shutdown Ale that they brewed.
Well, I'm an old guy. I just got my tea, ordinary tea, peppermint tea, as it was.
I'm really...
He's drinking straight absinthe.
Yes. And Justin, of course. Justin, the original gangster of This Week in Science. OG Justin.
I am. I'm also OG haplogroup G2, which has its origin and still some viability in the Caucasus. I'm going over my genetic history here again tonight.
Okay.
So the haplogroup you belong to has ancient roots where?
In the Caucasus region.
Hmm.
So we were the people my people spread out to inhabit all of Europe through the Bronze Age times, and also we were the first Jews. We were the OG Jews, as it were.
Oh. So you're the original Jew.
I'm the original Jew and the original European. And that's on the one side. The haplogroup, though, no, that's the haplogroup. That's the paternal side. That's the father's side. My mother's side is haplogroup G2. No, is what do you call it? No, that's the wrong way. What is it? I gotta go look it up. It's not the haplogroup. It's the haplogroup A2. Which is, my maternal line is A2, which is one of the founding Native American cultures. Come across the
Okay.
cold, bitter. So I
got no clue what mine is, to tell you the truth. Actually,
you should spend the $100. Do the 23andMe. It's a fantastic history. Mine, I think, is probably more interesting than most people's because it's about me, which I always find more interesting than learning about other people. But because I'm of such a mixed race, I've got all sorts of Northern European, Southern European, but the main driving chromosomal stamps are these like really ancient traveler people.
Okay, let's get to
and the Native Americans.
So does it still give you, I don't think it has it in the U.S. anymore. I think the FDA nixed it. But does it have your disease risk?
No. It took all of that away.
You know what?
I never got to see it. I showed up right after.
Oh, you can't see that probably, but that's a 23andMe app, and it still has the disease risk in Canada.
Really? I wonder if I could change my fake address. Like I can tell it that I've moved to Canada. Would it start giving me the rest of the story?
I don't know. That's an interesting. We could start something on the internet.
I know, right? Like I just moved to Canada, so I'm no longer under FDA control of my DNA information output, speculative as though it may be. Let me see it.
Also joining us in the chat room is Hot Rod. And Hot Rod is also drinking green tea. We got 2 tea drinkers. And I'm going to start by trying to share a YouTube video. Fingers crossed. God only knows what's going to happen here. And it's just a neat little story. And every week, every day, somebody is coming up with an app, a smartphone app that's helping people. Last week, I talked about farmers in Kenya. They had an app that helped tell them, you know, they could look at the, stick something in the soil, and based on the soil moisture and the chemicals in the soil, the app told them what was the best seeds they could plant. In this particular case, it is, it's helping blind hikers. Okay, let's try this.
Is there an app for touchscreen braille? Have they figured that out?
I do not know. It wouldn't surprise me. Okay, now, can you see it?
No, we're still, it's the camera on you. We gotta get,
okay. Over to the show. Oh, let's go back here. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the old man trying to use technology here. Come on. I know I can do it. Okay, I hit that little button. That didn't work. I hit another button over here.
The green arrowy thing on the left should bring up your
That's screen share.
Yeah. Isn't that what you're trying to do?
Well, actually, I had it set up. There's an app here. A YouTube app right on the left side. I set it up. It says it's playing. We can't see or hear the stupid thing. Oh well. It did. Okay. To heck with it. I'm going to go back to the original screen share green button here and see if I can do it that way. Let's see. Pressing buttons all over the place. Off to a fabulous start here.
This is strange. Yeah.
Pressing buttons.
This app. I don't see.
Oh, this is so much fun.
I see your screen share now on my side.
No, I don't know. Let's get rid of this sucker. Okay. Well, so much for the first story I tried here. Get out of screen share. That didn't work very well. In any event, come on. All right. There we go, guys. Real professional here. I'm going to go to the next story then, because I couldn't figure out that one. Anyway, what it is, it helps blind hikers. And it's GPS app. It's a smartphone app. And what it does is it basically works the same way as a car app, a GPS app if you were driving a car. It doesn't give them a step-by-step instructions, but it tells them, you know, 100 meters ahead, you have to turn to the left. So it kind of gives them a warning so they don't walk into a tree or something. And the main thing from what I saw in the video, which you can't see, is that it helps these blind people. It gives them confidence. It gives them a degree of control. It gives them a sense of control over when they're walking. And it showed, and they'll put a link in the show notes so you can watch it later. And it shows you have one guy who's he's walking off on his own, and he's got confidence, and the GPS device tells him, you know, you got to turn in the trail. And it really it's more for giving them a sense, giving a blind person a sense of control over their environment. And I think that's the great thing. The first story we've got is talking about electronic nerve stimulation may reverse spinal cord injury, nerve damage in patients. I will screen share that story. There's a little diagram, little picture, and researchers find that nerve stimulation can improve the function of peripheral nerves damaged by spinal cord injuries. This technique may be a new approach to preventing long-term change in nerve and muscle function after a spinal cord injury, and maybe really helpful when it comes to rehabilitation. Approximately 12,000 spinal cord injuries happen every year in the U.S. Better emergency care and therapy, it says, has made spinal cord injury manageable. I'm not sure. Well, you know, that would be great. More manageable, certainly. But researchers continue to investigate approaches to make it repairable. And that would be the real breakthrough. A new study in the Journal of Neurophysiology reports that peripheral nerve stimulation therapy can reverse spinal cord injury-associated nerve deterioration, potentially improving the benefits of current and emerging rehabilitation treatments. Muscles contract when the nerves controlling them are activated by electronic impulses from the brain. The brain loses control of the muscles after spinal cord injury because injured nerves do not excite easily or at all. In addition to the nerves in the spine, the peripheral nerves, nerves going to the limbs, downstream of the injury site, are also compromised, worsening muscle atrophy and other health complications that follow the injury. These secondary nerve deterioration also limits the benefits of rehabilitation therapy and the possibility of spontaneous recovery. Wow. Didn't even know you could have spontaneous recovery. According to the researchers, maintaining peripheral nerve function soon after the injury may lessen health complications and lead to better functioning and rehabilitation outcome later on. And in the study, the patients with spinal cord injuries underwent 30 minutes of electric nerve stimulation therapy 5 days a week for 6 weeks on one limb. The other limb remained untreated, and all subjects started the therapy within 6 months of injury. Patients with spinal cord injuries had less excitable nerves with altered responses to electrical stimulation indicating nerve dysfunction. After 6 weeks of therapy, the nerves in the treated limb responded to electric stimulation more like nerves in healthy subjects. Nerve function in the untreated limb did not change over the 6-week period. The study has clearly demonstrated that an intensive 6-week therapy peripheral nerve stimulation program was beneficial in improving nerve excitability parameters toward the normal range. Moreover, the improvement stayed if the patient continued with the stimulation therapy. According to the researchers, short-term peripheral nerve stimulation may be a new approach to preventing long-term changes in nerve and muscle function and improving rehabilitation outcomes. Therapies that help to maintain peripheral nerve function, such as peripheral nerve stimulation paradigm used in the current study, need to be incorporated into the mainstream rehabilitation program in early phase spinal cord injuries.
That's a very promising result right there.
I'm frustrated.
Uh-oh.
Because, you know what? I remember either reading about this or hearing about this 5, 6 years ago. And it was the same sort of thing. So is this just the most recent attempt at trying it with an independent study? Why aren't we making any progress here? It might have been TWIS a long time ago that did something on this. But I remember, like, I'm talking 2006, 2007. This is not the first rodeo that they've done with nerve stimulation. So are they trying to raise funding by throwing something out there in the press again, or what are they doing to advance the science here? Because I'm frustrated. Because I remember thinking, boy, you know, one of the shows we put on once a year is a telethon, and it's to help people with spinal injuries, all sorts of different conditions. And I remember thinking, it struck me back then, boy, if they could even, you know, give people 10% back, it'd make a massive difference in their lives. So I remember this has been done. What's different about it? Unless it's just, you know, are they raising money?
Well, they have successfully stimulated these nerves. Let's see, the present study has clearly demonstrated that an intensive 6-week peripheral nerve stimulation program is beneficial in improving nerve excitability. Now, I don't know by how much. I couldn't find the abstract, so I don't have a lot of details. Whatever procedure they used, whatever tools they used, and at least the people in the study, it did work. It did work in terms of they could see the nerves were being excited. Primarily, they're focusing on rehabilitation. They're not talking about correcting the injury itself. I'm guessing that's somewhere down the road. What they're talking about here is rehabilitation, making and preventing atrophy. That's a real problem. Is if you don't have successful rehabilitation treatments soon, these nerves and muscles atrophy. You get atrophy. In this particular case, that I believe is what they're treating. What they believe this will help treat. It'll make rehabilitation better, and you won't have the atrophy.
So to what Dale's saying then, initial possible proof of concept almost a decade ago. Now that large population with spinal injuries out there isn't who is the treatment is geared for and isn't who can receive this. It's going to be people who are recent injury doing a rehab, but also you have to then have that study granted. You have to have the study, you know, that whole process might be half the time we lost. And then it's a matter of finding enough subjects as you go, waiting for them to rise and having access to them and to getting permission to do your experiment, yada yada. So this is the slow pace, I think, likely, if this is connected to the previous research. This is probably some of the obstacles and the reason for the slowness.
It sure feels like this is rehashed. Like I'm going back to 1986. There's an abstract here from clinical observations in spinal cord stimulation, control of spasticity in patients with chronic spinal cord injury, and it's the same thing. What have they done differently? Is it a larger sample group?
So it could also be that we may have missed several of the studies in which they attempted to apply this to people who've been living for 10 years with a spinal injury and found no real positive results. and now they're figuring out that, okay, for rehabbing recently damaged nerve tissue, this is having an effect. And so now they're catching up to where that one concept seemed effective before. Now we've applied it to a bunch of things, and now 10 years later, we found the one area in which it's actually useful. I mean, this is total speculation, but it could very likely be that this isn't just a rehash of the same thing, but now the more focused version of where this can actually be applied in a useful manner. Maybe they've gone down a lot of dead ends and attempted to do that big healing project and found it was too late.
I get more and more skeptical because my fear is this, and again, I know no basis or proof to back this up, but that a lot of these studies, they're keeping scientists employed as opposed to doing some real science. And my frustration is, are there doctors on the sidelines right now that are reading this abstract or this science saying it's complete bullshit? We're already at the stage where we're trying to determine why it happens, and the real science of exactly what's going on to in that process that they're trying to figure out very substantially what's going on. It almost feels like the old pre-Soviet era where they were jamming electricity into everything like Frankenstein, and like, really, aren't we past doing that yet?
Right. Edison went blind thinking the healing powers of the warmth of the X-rays would heal his cataracts. In fact,
that's right.
Worse, but
I want people with spinal injuries to walk again. I want to improve recovery, but this one, my bullshit detector went off.
Okay, I don't believe people are going to get superpowers from radioactive spiders, but I could see how electrical stimulation of nerves could excite either stem cell activity or some sort of immune response that then excites stem cell response.
And I agree.
This is not a breakthrough. This is
exactly
not what you would call a breakthrough.
And that's my point. I think it does work, and I think there's science behind it. I just think we're past that.
I'm not sure. I mean, we're talking about spinal cord injuries. Wow, that's one of the back nerves. That's one of the toughest things to repair. You want to regrow the nerves, basically. Mm-hmm. You want to get that connection from the brain, that nerve endings, nerve signal down to, to the nerve endings in the spinal cord. Man, that may be one of the most complicated kinds of medical procedures.
Right, if you type in spinal cord electrotherapy, anything along those lines, you'll find a massive wealth of studies. I don't think we're learning anything here, and there's no details like from this article. Where is the detail on why can't we find an abstract? And so my only point is, I think it does work.
Let me see.
Are we wasting our time?
I don't think you're wasting. Well, are you wasting money?
I don't
think you're wasting time, but it's certainly possible that the money spent on this research might be better spent someplace else. I picked up this story originally from Science Daily, my favorite go-to site, and they if I can find it again, if I can find the stupid story again, because they usually have links to an abstract. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's see if I can give you more information. There we are, the journal reference. This is in the Journal of Neurobiology or something. Let me give you a link in the chat area to the story. Okay, science on the fly here. Let's see.
I'm just checking it out here.
You can certainly find
So another possibility, Dale, is
Now they got graphs.
a group of undergrads at the behest of a professor saying, well, this would be an interesting project. Put out that paper that you originally heard of. They ran the experiment. They got some positive result. But then everybody got jobs somewhere else doing something else. And the results sat around as something that somebody needed to replicate in order for anybody to move it further forward. And that didn't happen for 10 years, right? Like, there's always that. I mean, we assume sort of like that everybody who's publishing is publishing their life's work, their main focus, and that there's funding behind them. A lot of the times, a lot of what is published isn't necessarily the researcher's main focus. It's a project they worked on in collaboration with some other people, whether out of interest or out of funding opportunity to look into this. And then they're on to the next different project with different funders, looking in a different direction for something completely different. So,
yeah, I would say, just taking a quick look at that abstract, I would say this is not bullshit.
Well, no, my bullshit detector goes off like it's they're reevaluating science that's already done. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that I've seen several studies like this, and it's going back into the 80s. But you know, there is more. This abstract, there's accumulating evidence that peripheral motor axons deteriorate following spinal cord injury, SCI. Secondary axonal dysfunction can exacerbate muscle atrophy, contribute to peripheral. And so I think secondary axonal dysfunction is they're talking after the initial injury. There's increased dysfunction. It contributes to peripheral neuropathies and neuropathic pain. Okay, that's different. And leads to a further functional impairment. An attempt to ameliorate the adverse downstream effects that developed following SCI, we investigated the effects of a short-term peripheral nerve stimulation program on a motor axonal excitability in 22 SCI patients. Axonal excitability studies were undertaken in the median and common peroneal nerves bilaterally before it. Yeah, so the problem here is I don't understand enough of what they're talking about to know if this is covered over area.
The question is this going to lead somewhere? Like you say, people have done this kind of thing and have tried. Now again, they're only to me, they're talking about preventing atrophy primarily. That's what it is to me. They're stimulating the nerve, and their hope is, and it'll prevent atrophy from occurring, which will help rehabilitation. We're only talking rehabilitation, is the way I interpret the story. But the main thing is, you know, there's a lot of people doing this kind of thing. Is this the research that deserves more funding? That's got to be up to you know, the universities and whoever's issuing these kinds of grants.
Well, even in the abstract
it's out there. It's out there in the journal.
Like even within this abstract, it shows that I'm oversimplifying my argument. Because then again, like when you get down to the details, stimulus intensity was above motor threshold. They used pulses that are 450 microseconds and delivered at 100 hertz at 2-second on-off cycles, 30 minutes for 5 days a week. So already the amount of variability in that test, just with those different differentiators, if you change them, it may have a radical difference, may or may not have a radical difference. So just reading that one line shows that I'm oversimplifying my argument, because you know, when you do a study and you're doing it for over even a week, as a 1 week period with a very low subset of people, to change those, how many parameters? So the length of the parameter, 450 milliseconds, at 100 hertz, which is the frequency, with a 2-second on and off cycle for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So with those specific parameters, this was the outcome. So basically, it makes me want to retract what I just said.
And this is the way, this is the great thing, two great things. First of all, it's out there. It's out there for anybody who wants to read it. And now you can have researchers all over the world. They have the journal. They can look at this and all the other stories in the journal, and now they've got some information. Maybe they take it. Maybe they take it someplace else. Maybe they improve on it. I mean, this is to me the great thing about the way science works now. How I can't think of the right term, but how you have people coming together, and this is access.
Okay,
you
well,
have
this
access to all of this.
Yeah, like this, there's a lot of complexities when you try to activate the nervous system like that. It's first of all they went above the motor threshold, which would be above whatever usual intensity of pulses would be there through your own nervous system. So that's one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the pulse time. How long did they actually do that pulse? And they used 450 microseconds for each pulse. And then what frequency, because they're using alternating current, is my assumption, because you have frequency. That would indicate frequency, and that would be at 100 hertz. So when 100 cycles per second they're inducing that current. And then they're doing it for 2 seconds on and 2 seconds off. And then there's also how many times per day and how many days per week was it done. So there's enough variability in there that you could do probably 300 studies and not get even close to understanding what the outcome would be. So just reading that abstract that you put up makes me understand the variability a lot more.
Okay.
So that was good. That the article that was posted there made me oversimplify for sure.
Well, for me, getting back to why I use Science Daily, because it has links to the abstracts. But for me, to read the abstract most of the time, I got no clue what they're talking about. But at least I know there's an abstract in a professional journal that means something.
Yeah, much of my reporting on This Week in Science is like leading a donkey into a library. Just because I'm chewing on a particular book on a particular subject doesn't mean I can actually read it.
Yeah, we all have this, well, most people have this assumption that you know just as much as the scientists working on it, and that's inevitably 99.9% of the time false.
Absolutely false. Absolutely false.
But there's nothing wrong with being absolutely, that's called learning, right? Being skeptical.
And I've been, I feel like I've had a learning curve on the show too, where I can disagree with a result. I can disagree with how they did their research, or how they formulated, or what they looked at and what they didn't look at, what they left out of looking at. And sometimes there's a perspective of having looked at this many science stories over time, where whoever is publishing is focused on a very specific subject in a very specific circumstance sometimes, and may not have spent the last decade looking through and for stories related to this. They've been educated and they worked on a project and they got this result, but they might not be aware of as much. And I think this is, and I often say doctors are like mechanics, in that they work with a troubleshooter guide, and if this then that, if this then that, if this then that, yes, no, prescribe. And I sometimes feel like doctors are probably guilty of that much more so than the researchers who are trying to figure out where their research fits into the bigger field, because they're not even specifically looking necessarily into in a general practice sense. They're getting all sorts of stuff thrown at them, and they rely completely on the science. I have a friend who works he's a
I know, Patrick.
microbiologist in public health, and when a doctor sends in your blood samples or what have you to get tested, or does this mouth swab to see what's making you sick, it goes to a lab, they identify it, and they send it back. And when they send it back, there's two forms of what's sent back. There's one that's naming specific bacteria that are being infected, with the person's infected with. There's the levels of this, that, and the other in the blood, and then next to that is printed out what that means. Right? What having an elevated white blood cell level in correspondence to a liver enzyme means. Like it's translated for the doctors because they can't actually read the microbiologist report as the microbiologist sees it. They need it translated into doctor lingo, which they then attempt to translate into patient lingo. So there's this whole chain of command of translation that takes place there. But yeah, there's you don't have to understand everything about every subject to report the findings. The findings are simple sometimes, and
I'm gonna use a very bad segue there just to jump into the next story, because we're talking about understanding, we're talking about learning, and this Baylor sociologist, I just love sociologists. He's come up with this fantastic idea to take the stress out of taking tests. Let's have fun. You know, let's have fun when we're on. Let's make test day a fun day.
Okay, I'm out.
I would just get rid of the test.
You see, when I was young, it wasn't fun. They didn't have the technology to make it fun back then when I was going to school. So I want my children and my children's children to suffer in exactly the same way I suffered.
I don't know. This guy claims he gets better result. Here he is, Dr. Kevin Doherty of Baylor, and he's saying, my goal is to create an ambience for assessment that enhances learning and joy. And his students were skeptical, just like you, Dale. They were skeptical, and they often slip into the old familiar language of quizzes and tests. But members of our teaching team, myself and 2 graduate teaching assistants, gently reminded them that no such activities occurred in our course, because we're going to have fun. In a previous research, he found that students who used a Facebook group as part of a large sociology class did better in course assignments and felt a stranger sense of belonging. Uh-oh. We're drifting. I don't like that sentence right there.
No. So I've got a child, one of the 3 that I have sent to educational systems, which have been Montessori, which is what I went to for a portion of my education, where they do groupthink. I mean, they work in groups, they work on projects, and they do their big projects as groups, not as individual. You don't go out and they don't assign every student, do this paper and, come back with it. They say, okay, you 5 or 6 are working on this project. Which I can, that sort of doing your bit for the team does come into play. That sort of belonging to a group that's trying to achieve something is a good part of the education system. I mean, Montessori's had a nice, successful record of doing this.
Well, he's not calling these tests. He's calling this a celebration. I'll just read this one part. Each celebration includes 30 to 40 multiple choice questions with classmates featured in many of the questions. For example, a celebration dealing with formal sanction, such as a fine or expulsion officially imposed to discourage action. A student adopts a ferret and gets evicted from her campus resident hall. Students seem to appreciate reading about each other in the celebration. I think I'm going to stop there. I like the idea of fun, adding fun to the experience.
Maybe. I always had a weird relationship with testing. Or at least my teachers had a weird relationship with my testing. I thought it was fine. But I would have been a straight F student when it came to coursework, assignments, turn something in, remember to bring a piece of paper, write something on it, turn it into on a certain day. Straight F student. But when it came to testing, I was 99 percentile. I was like top of the charts for testing. And I don't know if it was just somewhat osmosis of while I'm doodling, I'm also listening to what the teacher's saying, right, in the class. But actually, I think it was just because I could interpret a test. I could read a test and tell what was a stupid answer and what was a proper answer. And I could figure stuff out from tests, especially multiple choice. Multiple choice testing is the easiest testing in the world. It gives you bad answers and only clear paths. But if the act of taking a test is doing something more than above and beyond regurgitating something that you've heard before, if the act of testing requires engagement, then I'm completely for it. I mean, this is what John Dewey, how he transformed the educational system and what standardized testing has been attempting to take away from our education system in the United States, which is that you, instead of sitting at the top of the class and reading off a list of ingredients, let's say in a home ec, right, and then at the end of the course having the students recite the list of ingredients back at the teacher, John Dewey would have the students cook something using those ingredients. And that's how, that visceral connection with actually doing in the classroom is how it improved retention, improved people's ability to absorb knowledge. So if part of the fun in this activity is making the test less rote, less memorize and regurgitate, then I'm all for it. If he's just throwing chocolates at people, for raising their hand quicker, then it's probably not achieving anything significant.
Yeah, we have, instead of a test, you've got to be able to demonstrate learning, as opposed to just answering questions. That you should be able to demonstrate in some way that in fact you have learned. A history test, I don't know, that might be a little difficult. Certainly, if you're talking about science, and you build something or you write out or you do something, you don't just answer questions from a list. There's got to be more to it than that. I get the impression where there's the funding and the right teachers, the learning experience is getting better, but the offset I can see, like our friend Pamela and Dale, you're not satisfied with the way schools teach, so what do? You homeschooling. And that homeschooling phenomena is a reflection of the dissatisfaction with how schools are teaching kids.
Yeah, I've been homeschooled for years. It's nothing new.
I don't know. I have a both appreciation of that and a revulsion to that concept of homeschooling. And it just, to me, it depends on where you are. I have the entire reason I pay triple the rent that I should pay for the square footage I inhabit is because really the school system here is top notch. The public school system is fantastic. I could see myself being completely for homeschooling if I was to be moved in a radius of 20 miles even from this location. There's places where there's no way I would send my child to that public school. So, I mean, when we're having this conversation, it is important to understand that every school system, every district, every classroom even at times can be different than the next. So.
Wait, you're talking about public funding, right? So if you've got public funding, there's got to be some way of judging. If, you know, are the teachers, you know, how do you judging teachers' performance? I don't know. I don't know how to do that, but.
Ed.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of something called No Child Left Behind? That is what you're talking about, and it was nothing but trouble.
That's true. That's
My
correct.
parents are teachers or were teachers when that was going down, and anytime they and their friends got together, you know, the only conversation they had was, what the fuck is going on with this No Child Left Behind bullshit? It's nothing but more tests, more tests, more tests, not learning, just testing, and all this kind of crap.
In where I live right now, they don't test, they don't fail anybody. Everybody's happy-pappy. There's no competition. I find that horrendous. I think that there has to be some sort of feedback mechanism in order to see how you're doing, and that's one problem I have with the school system here is
standardized testing and like the multiple choice bubble test things or just go on and on is not the way to do it. There's testing that involves interaction, as Ed was saying earlier. There are schools, like European schools, or at least schools in the UK, do oral testing instead of written testing. So they'll all drill the students on questions straight out, not just written down and what have you. There's also, I don't know if you ever heard of the Evergreen State College in Washington. Their testing is all project-based, and so their classes are not like chemistry and mathematics. It's all one big lump course where you have to use all the knowledge given to you by like a group of professors, and it's one big project for the entire thing. Kind of like what Justin was saying with Montessori.
Right.
I think it's exceedingly hard to teach any group anything. I mean, it's very difficult, and some institutions do a little better at it. But I think no matter how you do it, it's hard. It'd be interesting to get some good data on all the different methods and see if you can get some good data out of it.
Every individual has different learning styles that work best for them. So it helps to have schools that are aware of that and can tailor their curriculum to that. So like some students are auditory listeners, some students are visual learners, some students can only learn by doing, and so when they're just lectured at the entire time, they don't learn squat.
I think the closer you get to one-on-one, so if it's a 5-to-1 ratio, teacher ratio, a 10-to-1, the closer you get to 1-to-1, I think the higher probability or success rate would be.
Maybe, but I think to Patrick's point, the mode of learning. If you focus less on figuring out which kid is ADD in class and spending all this stupid loot on that, which is always the youngest child they identify in the class as being ADD, of course, because they're a different age group than the rest. But to Patrick's point, what I would envision is
good observation.
Yeah, an observation of students, and this is actually the Montessori I sent my son to. We'd gone and looked at preschools, and they would always be focused on us and like telling us what all the routines are and what everything that goes on in the school and everything that happens there. And one was like, and every day we'll send you home how many poops they made and how many grams of food they ate. And I was like, well, I don't know that. And then the other school, the Montessori, they absolutely ignored us. And the representative was laser focused on my child's behavior and was assessing the child. And this was like, oh, yeah, this is absolutely where my son is going. They're focused on the right thing. They figured out the priority here. But my point is, in Patrick's scenario of assessing the child's learning, you wouldn't. I don't even think it would matter if it was 1-on-1, 1-on-5, 1-on-25. But you would have a classroom in which, regardless of the number of students that were crammed into it, they'd all be receiving the lesson on exercise bikes, right, in one classroom, right? In the next classroom over, there would be no screen that people were watching. Everything, the room might be slightly darkened, and the entire lesson would be coming through audio, right? And then there's another classroom where they're just going, it's intense visuals for the whole thing. Everybody's seated, reclined slightly in the lazy boy, and on a very large screen television, the lesson is being animated into, and it's the same lesson in all three classrooms. But yeah, if you really focused on the student and the student's receptiveness to learning, then there could be this huge leap forward. But none of that matters without the parents. So even if you sent your kid to whatever you happen to land in public school, Dale, your kids will do better with their education than the parent who is completely unfocused on education and is using the school as a daycare.
Okay, so I have something really important to say,
Yes.
and you guys can rip the shit out of it after I say it.
Go for it.
So, in the early 1900s, because of industrialization, we had no real computers. We had to train our kids to do math and all these other things that no computers around at the time. Essentially, we're training a generation of people to become the computers, the biological computers, to figure all this shit out that we need to do for industrialization. So now, as we get into artificial intelligence and all these other systems coming online, human beings aren't quite as necessary. What are we going to be educating our people to do when, you know what, it doesn't matter whether you know math or not. We've got the calculations that can occur on the computers. What's our focus going to be for our children in the future, or do we just need a babysitting service?
Yeah, okay. So, Dale, not to rip you, but, okay. So you've got the child who was educated in the 1900s who can do, you know, four-place math equations off the top of their head. They can give you a 10,000 divided by a 7,000 or 6 or 700 number, or a multiplication of that right away. They can calculate that stuff in real time. How actually useful is that form of math mastery in an age of a calculator, even, right? Like, so, okay, so we had this thing that was this profound skill that we could train a mathematician to do in accounting or whatever, in engineering, but now actually, yeah, at the click of the button, that can be mastered. So now what is the next level of importance of, you know, of,
Isn't it
of
creating?
understanding of
I have
mathematics?
an answer to this.
Hmm?
So, I do IT, right? And specifically, I do IT for Apple computers. And recently, like 4 months ago, they wanted me to get certified in Apple computers. And I was like, okay, fine. I know the majority of the stuff. I'm sure the test will be really easy. So I didn't even study for the test. I just took the test. But you know what that test was actually about? It wasn't about memorizing all of the stuff on Apple systems and whatnot. Those questions were really specific. Like, one of them was, what is the screw length for the corner left screw on this MacBook in this spot? They don't want you to memorize it. They want to know that you can find the answer.
Okay. 4 millimeters.
It was like 3.5.
Ah!
But no, they want to know that you can navigate their knowledge-based system and the internet to find the answers to the test. So that when you come into a problem where you don't know what to do, you can find out.
Right. Yeah, the open book test. It's essentially, yeah, you could reach for the screw, you could pull it out, and you could measure it, and you go, it's about that.
Right.
Doesn't matter how you got the information. The only thing that counts is, can you do something? That's what I think you're talking about.
So this was a recent research study that I considered bringing to the show last week or so, but I missed out. Maybe it was the week I wasn't there. But it found that students who cheated on tests
the information better.
We're actually the more cognitively capable of the group. Like those that figured out, like,
for one, they were trying to figure out how to cheat to get away with it and not get caught.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, because they were like strategizing it. But no, it would be sort of like getting that question on the screw, and instead of giving up or guessing, going, oh, actually, this is an Apple computer. I can pull the screw out, and I can kind of take a look at it, and I can estimate, oh, it's about that. But it was that sort of cheating. It was cheating where there was an open book version of the answer somewhere accessible to the student. And those who took advantage of not having known the answer, but having accessed that somewhere in the test or in the scenario or in the book that was sitting next to them or whatever the scenario was, sort of looked for the answer in the real time. Also, when they went to a pure rational testing of cognitive ability later, also happened to score higher.
So, and this is the way they do the test now, and I can totally see them really laggy right now, but the way they do the test now is completely different from the way they did it a year ago. A year ago, they did it where you enter into a room and the test proctor, something, I don't know, would pat you down and lock up all your belongings, so you didn't have any way to cheat. So they wanted you to memorize everything then. Now they've completely switched. It's like, no. We don't care if you can memorize all this. All we want to know is that you can find the answer.
Yeah.
You know, didn't I see this in a Star Trek? Wasn't that James Kirk with that Tobarashi Maru or whatever the heck it is? He was the only one in the Academy to ever pass it.
No,
yeah, exactly.
So that it failed.
Because
so he could do it.
He cheated.
Yeah. Right.
But he said, hey, if I have to save my crew, if I'm in a situation where I need to save my crew, I will cheat to do so.
I think this whole education thing, I think the whole education thing is a really big deal because we can't anticipate where we're going to be in a few years. One of the important things, and you guys know it, it's finding happiness. Really...
No, you can't let that be the thing, Dale. Dale, if you give in to that, they've got you.
I don't know. The Canadian has to bring up happiness. I don't know. Okay, Dale, I got to stop for a second. Okay. I got to ask you, what the heck is that lower thirds? You got orbiting Zotox?
Zatox.
You on drugs tonight or something?
I am on drugs, and I did find you can buy happiness, and it's called Innocent Gun, and you can buy it at your local brewery. It's very good, and so the educational system, take note. There is a way, and it's drinking. It's alcoholism.
So you're saying we need to go the German route and give beer to the students at lunch?
Get out of here. Do they give the... That's not true.
I don't know. Might as well. The adult beverage is like 20% alcohol. The child beverage is not no alcohol. It's like 8%.
I just think we're hitting a point where within the next 20 years, I think artificial intelligence will be approaching the point where we're kind of looked after. Our phones will kind of help us out a lot, anticipate our needs. What school is today and what we actually need are two different things, and to anticipate what it's actually going to be is nearly impossible.
Okay. I need everybody to be quiet for a moment. Just for a moment here. Siri, What do you think of world robot domination?
I'm sorry, Justin. I'm afraid I can't answer that.
Did you guys get that?
Okay, ask Siri to divide 0 by 0.
Oh yeah, I did this the other day.
Sorry, Justin.
All right, sorry. All right. Siri, divide 0 by 0.
Sorry, I didn't get
Oh,
that.
sorry, hang on.
Could you
I can do it.
Oh wait, I can do it. Hold on.
Divide 0 by 0.
Divide 0 by 0.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh,
Could you restate the question?
Imagine that you have 0 cookies and you split them evenly among 0 friends. How many cookies does each person get? C, it doesn't make sense. And Cookie Monster is sad that there are no cookies, and you are sad that you have no friends.
How come your
You
Siri's a
guys are having too much fun. This
How come
is
your
way
Siri's
too much fun tonight. I'm going to kill the enthusiasm right off the bat.
Oh, good.
'Cause I'm going to be talking about quantum mechanics.
I understand nothing.
Not quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement.
I understand
How's that
nothing.
to
of this.
kill the buzz here? All right. Okay, I'm going to screen share.
Speaking of weird stuff, did you see this story about how we're no longer the product of a Big Bang, we're the product of a fourth dimensional star?
No, I didn't see it. Okay. We got diagrams. We got pretty pictures. Pictures of a quantum frequency cone. Whatever the heck that is. All right. We got our friends at UCLA, the electronic engineers, and they say they've demonstrated a new way to harness light particles or photons that are connected to each other and act in unison no matter how far apart they are, called quantum entanglement. Previous studies, photons have typically been entangled by one dimension of their quantum properties, usually the direction of their polarization. In the new study, researchers demonstrated they could slice up and entangle each photon pair into multiple dimensions using quantum properties such as photons, energy, and spin. And they call this hyper-entanglement. Okay. Multi-dimensions. What do they, anybody know what they would mean by multi-dimensions? Just width and...
Height, width, depth.
Well, a dimension, just replace that with aspect, right? It's just two different aspects. So quantum spin is one aspect. You don't have to really understand it, but it's just one aspect. And what did they say other than spin?
Energy and spin.
So yeah, energy level, we understand that at an elementary level. And then, so those are just two different aspects. If you, and again, in a lot of cases, you can replace dimension with, it's just a different aspect. It could be length, width, height. So dimension, think of aspect.
I was thinking it meant more than two dimensions. Because they talk about, jumping ahead, they talk about 5 dimensions. A photon pair entangled by 5 dimensions can carry 32 times as much data as a pair entangled by only 1. So they're talking about 5 dimensions.
Yeah, that's fine.
The 5th dimension is a hypercube.
Well, if you're talking about measuring quantifiable space, it is. But a dimension mathematically could mean any quantifiable difference.
Okay, that makes sense. Going on, quantum entanglement could allow users to send data through a network and know immediately whether that data had made it to its destination without being intercepted or altered. With hyperentanglement, they can send denser packets of information using the same networks. Now, they're back to talking about slicing up and entangling each photon pair. Slicing up a photon pair. Oh, well.
This is really big for encryption, I think.
Okay. Okay. Let me jump ahead. And the new researcher...
The only way to know that something got to someone's destination is to measure it. Once you measure it, you've destroyed it. So if you can know without having to measure it that I got there, then you're good.
Yeah, you're just trying to verify that it got there.
Right.
Okay.
That's what this is saying, I think.
In the new study, researchers sent hyper-entangled photons in a shape known as a biphoton frequency cone. That's that stupid little picture. Yeah. Essentially, breaking up entangled photons into smaller parts. Interesting to know how the heck they could do that. Breaking up photons. Because aren't photons, well, photons are a force carrier. I didn't know you could break up photons. Oh, well. And in secure data transfer, which you were talking about, Patrick, photons sent over fiber optic networks can be encrypted through entanglement. With each dimension of entanglement, the amount of information carried on a photon pair is doubled.
This is quantum entanglement, right? So you have multiple photons that are entangled with each other. If you break them apart into smaller pieces, you have individual photons.
Yes, if you can break photons up into individual. I didn't know you could break photons up.
No. It's quantum entanglement. They're entangled. Multiple photons are entangled. When you break them up, you have singular photons.
Oh, okay. Okay, right.
I think you guys are missing it. They talk about wavelength division multiplexing. We use that in broadcast. It's optical transports, electrical transports. Basically, if you think of a sine wave, that sine wave can represent a whole bunch of different pieces of information based on the energy level given at a certain time. So if you take a photon, it's going to be measurable, and it's not the same all the time. It's not like a DC current. It's going to measure. You can measure different aspects of it at different times. So if you can control those measurable aspects, you can end up with a whole lot more data transport. So in something like we use is called coded orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. Essentially, what you're doing is you're transporting a stream of data, and you're getting the data by two means. One of them is within the frequency itself. If you think of the waveform as it goes, you can widen that, and you can make it smaller, and you can derive data from that. So in simple terms, you can take the wavelength and stretch it out, and that could represent a 1, and you could compact it, and it could be a 0, right? You also have amplitudes that you can change as well, and that's so you could say this energy level is a 1 and this is a 0. So it's in its simplest terms. What they've been able to do is not actual. I don't think they're actually breaking up the photons, but they're measuring the intensity of those two different dimensions at the same time, if I make any sense.
Yeah, I think you've got it exactly right, because the last sentence says the results greatly extends from wavelength multiplexing, the method of carrying many videos over a single optic fiber.
Yeah, so we do that all the time. It's slightly different. Like coded orthogonal means they're talking with respect to the energy level that's orthogonal to something else. You can replace that almost with the term perpendicular. But anyway, and then wavelength division multiplexing. Multiplexing is just you're taking a bunch of information at once. Wavelength, they're just, the wavelength is they're commenting on frequency. So they're just looking at it at different areas at different times of whatever dimensions they're going in. In co-FDM, in that coded orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, what they're doing is they're looking at amplitude, so the energy level at a certain point in time, and you can also represent 1s and 0s as wavelength, so you can compact the wavelength makes it longer, and you can actually do a whole bunch of other things to it too, right? Once you get control of the physical nature of these things, you can control all sorts of dimensions and aspects, and every time you're able to control reliably one aspect, you can then create another on and off bit, basically.
Interesting. The other question I had as far as quantum entanglement that I don't get is the idea. Okay, these two particles, they could be any distance apart, and an effect on one has an immediate effect on the other. Isn't that happening faster than the speed of light? Let's say they're 100,000 light years away.
As an illusion, yes. Yes. But the illusion is that we assume that time and not to say relativity right off the bat, but time and relativity to how we observe it has anything to do with time as it is observed from the perspective of the photon. So, point A to point B, whether it's from your flashlight to the wall or a distant star to a detector here on Earth, the electron experiences no time. There's no difference from the moment of departure to the moment of arrival from its perspective because of the speed at which it's traveling. One photon of light that leaves our sun and reaches planet Zorga, the next photon of light that leaves our sun witnesses that first photon arriving there. I mean,
It's just like warp factor 10.
right? There's a meaninglessness of time when you're talking about a photon of light. There's just a meaninglessness to it. So that
Right, because of relativity.
yeah, so that the when you're talking about something the spooky action at a distance of the being up here and then immediately being down there, is because they share a concurrent history of time throughout their entire existence that is happening from that perspective simultaneously. And because we, with our massy, gloopy, gloppy, condensed matter moving slowly through time, we observe it as happening instantaneously. It is a sort of like faster than the speed of light, but from its perspective, all of this has all occurred in one instance and makes complete linear logical sense.
The simplest way you can put it is you can manipulate time by changing your velocity relative to something else. And that sounds really complicated, but it's not. If you take two objects and change their velocities, what changes between them is time as you approach the speed of light.
So it's kind of like a magic trick.
It's completely magic. I wish I frickin' understood it. It's amazing. It's awesome.
Okay. That was helpful. I can't say I understand it, but it helped me. It helped me improve my understanding of it. And it's all about perspective and space-time, I guess.
So that's part. Also, one of the important factors in this is that you can only do it once, as far as I can tell. This magic trick is loaded in as though you put a sleeping, subdued dove up your shirt sleeve, and when you do your magic trick and the dove suddenly appears as if out of nowhere and flies off, that's the one shot you had at that magic trick. You can't continue to repeat this magic trick with entangled particles, because that one instance of everything being connected, once it's interfered with, is no longer in its sort of separate
Indecisive state.
That's
time
not
sphere. What's that?
That's not nearly as useful.
Yeah, no, it isn't. It isn't. And so what it is we have to continually be manufacturing. We need like a high volume production of entangled particles to come anywhere near some sort of long distance communication thing where we could plunk out even maybe a Morse code.
So it's like it's one-time pad encryption is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's worse than that because it's only 1 bit encryption too.
But
I mean,
imagine,
like you can only have it work.
Well, no, because in the story he just read, it said that you could do up to 32 times the original. So this is 32 times better.
I actually got the opportunity to talk to a physicist, and I had my own theory, and I thought I was being brilliant, and I said, well, what I'm interested in, my hypothesis, and he totally ripped me a new one. It was hilarious. So it showed my immaturity at these things. But I said, what I'm excited about in quantum entanglement is eventually there's the thing where we'll have this radioless communication that doesn't matter where you are, we'll have perfect communication. And beyond that, it's can we communicate now into the future if we can manipulate time? If you can slow down photons, can you manipulate that? And he goes, we already have that technology, and I'm like, wow, really? Like what discovery? He said it's called a letter.
Well, okay. So, but here's the thing. So you're right though, Dale. And it's maybe still beyond our reach of complication. But you could create a chain of non-interfered with entangled particles that you're bouncing around in some manner that eventually hit a detector. And that detector could be, in a location far enough away where it's actually reaching it in the future or the past, in relation to when the information first started bouncing around. So you could time travel information to some extent, but again, the main problem of it all is that once that sort of removed from our tick-tock time interacts with our tick-tock time, it becomes part of our tick-tock time. As soon as that interaction takes place, that entanglement is gone, and so it has to. And as far as I know, I mean, if they can do this 32 times with the same entanglement, I'm kind of curious to see how they've done that. That's pretty interesting. Because up till my understanding of it, it was you could do it with that 1 bit of up-down, and once it was unentangled, once it was observed or detected or recorded, that was it. That was the end of that sort of confluence of everything happening at the same time, regardless of tick-tock time.
So you're not moving backward or forward. It's instantaneous.
Well, okay. So here's the experiment, and I'm gonna slaughter it.
Instantaneous throughout time.
Right. So here's the sort of really weird experiment. So you've got an entangled particle, 2 entangled particles, and then the second entangled particle you entangle again. So now it's split off into 2 different trajectories, and you do an effect on the first entangled particle that didn't entangle itself, and that entangled particle is now done. It's now history. But the other entangled particles that are still existing show evidence of that interaction, right? So these are particles that were separate in time, it seems, but the point of the entangled particles, it's the same system that's happening instantaneously. And our observation of one event happening before or after another event is absolutely meaningless to an entangled system. To an entangled system, since everything happens at once, even though you made a measurement before and then later, or did something after something had been destroyed and see the evidence of it in it, it's all meaningless to the perspective of the entangled particles. For them, everything happened concurrently in the exact same time space. Even though our observation can sort of separate and delineate our tick-tock time and saying, wow, we did an observation here and destroyed a particle that had an effect on particles that weren't seemingly connected to it at a later date. Well, it's like future or past time travel, but it's not, because from the system that we're manipulating, everything was happening concurrently anyway, so time as we perceive it was utterly meaningless to its system.
It's just like warp factor 10.
Again, yes.
Dale, I'd just like to finish off by saying that any recorded information is communicating into the future.
I
Not
know.
just letters.
Yeah, I got slapped like royally, and it was wonderful. It felt really good.
Yeah. So my time travel machine was if you could create a tachyon detector on a satellite and put it out into deep, deep space, and then launch information at it in the present, it would detect it in the past. I think the problem is it wouldn't get back to us until it was the present again. And so that's part of the mean trick of space timey-wiminess, is that there's this inherent like time it takes to there's the maximum speed of information traveling, whether it's going forward or backward in time, still requires the distance to travel.
I think the coolest communication. I think the coolest practical communication technology we have right now is something that was misconstrued like 5 years ago. That was talked about on TWIS, the radio booms.
I don't remember this.
Call it superluminal nefarious ether, something. It was how if you put a all the headlines were saying that it was faster than light communications, when actually it was a pattern going through a salt crystal faster than light, and it was making radio booms. So like this really weak signal, and then all of a sudden it peaks at a certain point, at a certain distance, and you can pick it up at a really strong. I like that. That's really cool.
Alright. Go on to the subject of breaking the gender barrier. And the more I read about NASA, this is absolutely the top organization in the United States government, and we should be giving them buckets of funding. Buckets for funding. And one of the things they're doing, and let me screen share, just so you don't have to look at the top of my head, you can look at the top of her head and her ponytail. It says, the headline, it's a press release.
Can
For the first time,
I just point out real quick? Her shirt is lifted up a little bit in the back.
That's not good.
No. What the positive sign is, it's revealing she has no tramp stamp.
That's
the progress that the lifted shirt's like. Check it out. I got here, and no tramp stamp. This is a message to the young girls that we may have missed as a group of men, but the lack of a tramp stamp is speaking volumes about her past. Okay.
Now, what our friends at NASA have done is, for the first time, half of the astronaut class is now women. And they're offering new opportunities for female tech entrepreneurs. And they're targeting specifically women. The notorious lack of women in leadership roles in STEM seems to run rampant everywhere. NASA administration not only gives women puts women at the helm, but continually gives them a platform to drive the larger conversation. And they can talk about Ellen Stoffen, serves as Chief Scientist of NASA. Deborah Diaz is NASA's Chief Technological Officer for IT. Teresa Van Hooser runs one of NASA's largest facilities in the U.S., responsible for building rockets. Dr. Tara Rutley manages the science programs aboard the International Space Station. For the first time, half of an astronaut class consists of women. And now, through the convening of a new user community called DataNut Corps, NASA is unlocking opportunities for women entrepreneurs in the tech and maker communities to use the agency's infinite gigabytes of open data to pioneer space-inspired data science. And this DataNauts program, emerging at an ideal time, as big as data is big as big data is. Anyway, it needs diversity to thrive. And according to the 2011 report of the Economics and Statistics Administration, women have zero employment growth in STEM jobs since the year 2000. Considering 5 of the top 10 jobs for millennials are of the tech and maker space, with data scientists coming out at number 4, the need for the inclusion of women is more pressing than ever. And the only way society can get closer to having a 360-degree perspective is through democratization of roles across male-dominated industries. A couple of paragraphs to go. For women in science, over the centuries, our contributions in so many fields are there, but they're not talked about as much as they should be. The convergence of open data and female leadership has the potential to challenge traditional decision-making across sectors and facilitate more data-driven and cooperative approaches in creating new ventures and solving problems. And the DataNauts was born out of NASA's open data priorities as a means of bringing more women into the open data table. While the program is intended for men and women, the funding class was made up entirely of women to encourage more female techies and makers to take the data leap, as Beth Bake, Open Innovation Program Manager at NASA's Office of Chief Information Office, calls it. Future classes will include men. And I'll stop there.
So as someone who works with NASA at a NASA facility, I feel like there's almost more women there than there are men. I'm trying to remember all my users.
I'm just disappointed we never talk about the Canadian Space Agency.
There's the Canadian Space Agency?
There's the Canadian Space
Chris
Agency?
Hadfield's the head of it or something.
Wait. Are you serious? No. Don't be. There is one?
Yeah, Chris Hadfield is a Canadian astronaut.
Oh no, I don't doubt that there's Canadians that work for NASA. That's not what I was saying. I was saying that I was surprised that they had their own space program.
Look it up.
No, it's not that. Chris Hadfield doesn't work for NASA. He works for the Canadian Space Agency, who has a partnership with NASA.
Oh, like a subcontractor.
No, more like a partnership.
Okay. So wait.
No, like the ESA, the European Space Agency. Canada has a space agency too.
I put the link in the side in the chat.
Okay. I got. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna have to look at this because I didn't mean to be mocking. Well, at the end I did, but at the beginning, I really didn't.
Did you know Mexico has a space agency?
Okay, stop. Okay, stop.
No, they do.
Look. Just because somebody's trying to figure out a way to put another Telemundo satellite into space doesn't make that a space agency. All right?
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm looking at your link, Dale. And the first thing it says, what's new? And the next link is train disaster and natural disasters. I don't know.
Doesn't NASA investigate the ecology of the local environment, et cetera, et cetera? It's no different in Canada.
Yeah, except there's people that are trying to prevent them from doing that anymore. Mostly one named Ted Cruz.
Well, we got Canadian robotics, it says.
Well, yeah, the Canada arm.
The Honorable Paul Josel?
The arm on the Space Shuttle and the arm on the ISS was made by Canada.
Wait a second. Okay, wait.
Oh my God, you guys didn't know any of this?
No, look, hang on. I'm looking at the infographic. Okay. Today's investment at a glance in the Canadian space industry. Are Canadian dollars are they a magnitude larger than American dollars? Because this is showing, I mean, I don't know the currency exchange, but it's showing $13.1 million. And
That's it?
is there a magnitude? Is that 13.1 million Canadian dollars is 13.1 billion American dollars? Is that?
Well, look how pretty the web page is.
No, it's a great
It all
website.
went into web development.
They definitely know their IT. Okay, I'll give them that.
I see associated links here. It says Canadian space technology helps breast cancer patients. Canadian space technology to help sick children. Robotic arms lead to healing touch. I don't know.
All right, so Justin, are you against sick children, or
Am I what?
are you against sick children?
Yes! Yes, I am against. Who would be for making children sick? This makes no sense. Who could possibly be for making more sick children in the world? I don't think that's something anybody should be for. And if I find somebody who's for making children sick, I will be against them.
You're lobbying to be Ted Cruz's campaign manager.
Oh, yeah. He should hire me. So, what do you think of Ted Cruz's chances in the general election? Yeah. I think he has the best shot of anybody to beat the front runner. Oh, Hillary? No, Bernie Sanders. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Hillary? I ain't scared of Hillary. Bernie? No, but this is going to sub-tangent. The spokesperson for the Hillary Clinton campaign who always gets forced out there because Hillary Clinton won't talk to reporters yet about policies or opinions or anything. Somebody brought up Bernie Sanders. She goes, really? A socialist? Right? And the first thing I thought was wow, that's what the right wing kept calling Obama the entire time. And look what happened. He won twice while they called him a socialist. Yeah, that's a great strategy, Hillary. Try the same thing that failed by the Koch brothers and everybody else. Label your opponent the socialist and see what happens. Because, yeah, it
You know, Dale, I've always been very impressed. I know you're a good technician about the ability of Canadians to make stuff. And then I happened to come across this show, an old called Red Green.
best show
Red
that's ever
Green
best show that has ever been on the air of any state. I used to stay up as a teenager. I think I was 11 or 12, and the SEC TV took over the airwaves of my local TV station at about 1 in the morning. And it would start off with the SCTV, which ran for about 4 hours on one loosely threaded together plot. And I'd have to stay up just past that for the Red Green show, which was, to this day, the greatest show that has ever existed in the history of television.
If they don't find it handsome, they better find it handy.
Yeah, right. And I was like, this is why I think I want Science Island. I think it's because of the Red Green show. Like, this is how, like, these guys to go out there.
Had a think using gunpowder.
No, that's the Saturday Night Live bit where they blow. They didn't blow each other up on the Red Green Show, did they? Did they blow themselves? No, that was a skit.
Every 5 minutes there was a gun going off in the background.
But it was all about duct tape, right? They fixed everything with duct tape.
This
That was the central premise.
is almost what I.
Shaving and there was hair all over the sink or whatever, and it's like, you know how you can clean this up? Just a little bit of black powder.
Yeah. But this is how actually I imagine the Science Island podcast looking. Like once we had Science Island, it would be the Red Green Show. It's like, okay, we had a shot at a moose the other day. Okay, but he's pretty big. Yeah. So we decided to go have a beer instead. This is almost like what I feel like we would turn into. But I remember this show vaguely
Okay with that.
and specifically. Now I have to go and watch episodes of the Red Green Show to revisit my youth and figure out what the hell influenced me back then.
SCTV, it was big.
Oh, I loved SCTV.
But Bob and Doug
Justin,
McKenzie.
so well now. I now understand where you came from. That the Red Green Show was a big influence on my life.
Oh yeah, the McKenzie brothers, the woo, 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 all that. Right? But also there was something about SCTV's ability to create an episode. This is like pre-Seinfeld. They would create an episode about nothing, but tie it all together in a way that made you interested throughout the whole insane wackiness of it. And it was, from what I actually understand, retrospectively, a lot of it was improv. A lot of it was like, okay, the three of us are going to be in this room and have a conversation, and we have to leave here, but the rest of it, the writers had a couple too many beers and didn't write. So figure out what you're going to say while the scene is happening and we're filming, but make sure it ends in that direction. Right? Like, this is how they did the whole thing. It was like almost entirely improvised. And
That's where John Candy got his start, right?
oh yeah, yeah. And there's a rawness of that having to follow the other person says something in improv, and you have to follow along with it. You can't go, no, that's not actually what. No, you have to like, yes, I was caught with a beaver. But it was an actual beaver, which is what made it really embarrassing, the photographs. That's why, like, you had to follow somebody's lead in every scenario. And you can sort of see, like, and their ability not to break character and lose it, but take it seriously. And the way that you take something seriously when you're about to lose character and absolutely start laughing on air is to take it more seriously. So some of the drama became intense, like more and more intense. They got added as the actors attempted not to completely lose it. And
Well, here's so a lot of the people that worked on that production, it was started in Edmonton, and a lot of the old timers that worked on that show a long time ago, I still work with today. They're still around.
Oh, wow.
A lot of them have retired, but it's all about Canadians had a thing about we're okay poking fun at ourselves all the time and talking about back bacon and all the other crazy Canadians saying A all the time. We like poking fun at ourselves, and I think humor is a good thing. You know?
Only that were true of the U.S.
But the saying A all the time does come down to where we started these conversations earlier. It comes down to education. And when you teach in a rote manner, in a complete repeat response and repeat manner, where you teach somebody something and have them repeat it back to you, this is why, unfortunately, Canadians inherited A and saying A all the time. Right, eh? All right, eh? Because in school, one of the first things Canadians are forced to do is recite the spelling of their country's name. C, eh? N, eh? D, eh? And so, naturally, it flows from there that every other it's like a nervous tick after that. Just oh yeah, A, oh, okay, A, C, A, N, A, D, A. It just continues on throughout, and it never leaves. So you have to be careful sometimes how you educate people.
That's right.
I watched a clip of that on YouTube, and then I realized Tim Taylor stole that show. You know, Tim the Toolman Taylor? That's basically Red Green, except an American version with a hot wife.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. It's also every reality show on Discovery right now. It's also, but yeah, the what was the Martin Short? Martin Short had that with Tom.
Yeah, Martin Short is SCTV too.
Yeah. Martin Short though went with the spiked hair up front.
Oh yeah.
Right, and then Thompson was his brother in that one. Like there was all these great little weird duo-y things that they created. Anyway, I gotta go back and now go YouTube some SCTV.
Yeah, SCTV. One of my favorites was the when they were showing off their 3D capability, and they would offer you a cup of coffee, and they'd swing it into the camera and swing it out of the camera. It was just like, it's so stupid. But yeah, they had from talking to some of the people that worked on that production, they had lots of fun and lots of beer drinking. Just had a good time. You know, it came down to just some creative minds having a good time.
Okay, once again, you people are having too much fun.
Okay.
I have you guys. Now I'm going to get serious here.
Oh, come on. We were starting the origins of the SITV, Science Island Television. We were going to create our own improv band and start doing like creating characters and. All right. What's next, Dad? What's next on the platform?
Facial recognition technology. You for it or against it? The gist of this article really is that it's starting to become more prevalent, and it's starting to become more prevalent when it's not really a mature, perfected industry. And of course, the people who really want to push for this are things like, you know, obviously Homeland Security, all the security firms, all the security people, the police. They're pushing. They're the ones primarily pushing for this, and they're the people who don't want to have control. They don't want to have to go to a nasty judge and say, "Listen, we got to follow this person. We got this person, and this picture, can't you see it? It sort of kind of looks like him. Come on, you can see the hair there. That's that guy." Yeah. Okay. And so go ahead.
Well, this reminds me of the earlier conversation we had tonight when we were talking about the school systems, whether you would homeschool or send your kid to a public school. Depends on the school district you're in. Whether you're for or against facial recognition, I think it depends on the country you're in or the region you're in. Look, I see this as absolutely horrible Big Brother sort of a scenario where you're living within a dictatorship and you said something and it's associated with your face, so now they can find you and pull you aside and have that sort of big brother-y conversation with you. On the other hand, if you're in the United States and somebody escaped from prison and they drove past a 7-Eleven and an external camera caught a view of a face that matched, and now they've identified where they can track down the prisoner, like, it depends, of course, on your belief or trust in the Big Brother system in your locality.
You know what? The U.S. has a brilliant set of, you know, great schools, great everything else, but you can't figure out how to prioritize. You know what? Like, it's how many people die from certain causes. The wrong priorities. I guess it ends up in politics, right?
Well, to an extent. But you know where I've seen facial recognition work?
It goes into more capitalistic society.
Okay. So when I go over to my friend's house, And we one of the things we do is we drink beer and we play video games. This is what we do.
Really, I had no idea.
Yeah, this is the thing. We have an ongoing NFL franchise. I think we're in year 7. We've progressed this thing. But if we got the Xbox One on, and I walk past it, all of a sudden on the screen says, "Hi, TWIS Minion," right? Because there's a facial recognition in Xbox One Connect, and the way that I log in to being able to, play my game is it's a facial recognition thing. So it's always like I go over to his house and I say hello to the television because it's like "Hi, TWIS Minion." Oh yeah, hi. Oh, you recognize me. That's amazing. So the technology has been, and we're talking history here. The future was yesterday. The future was months ago on facial recognition. Right? Now, if I had a twin brother or a similar-looking brother or somebody who just looked like me, I'm always curious, like how detailed of a lookalike does it need to be to actually have registered me? Like if I grow a mustache, which I can't do because I'm Native American. What if I grew a mustache? Would it still recognize me? If I kind of hid part of my, like, what is it really drilling down on? Yeah, Xbox. Video game console can do facial recognition and recognizes me when I'm in that household.
So I have a question. Ed, why do you say it's not a mature industry?
Well, my perception is that it's certainly not 90%. I will say 90% accurate, and I have no idea what the actual accuracy is. But I don't think you could. I don't think you could use facial recognition photograph in a court of law. That's my guess. It's not precise enough to be able to use in a court of law. You'd use it as a means of investigating and following someone, but I don't think it's precise enough to be able to use in a court of law. That's just my guess.
Okay, so
I have a couple things to say about that. Can I speak first, Justin?
Yeah.
Okay. So back in 2010, I think, I went to a hacker conference in New York called Hackers on Planet Earth. There were 2 talks. One of them was on how you can defeat facial recognition technology. And his methods were to, like, I don't know,
wear fake glasses?
No, basically was to, fake glasses wouldn't help, actually. His methods were to paint your face like Kiss, where you have various black stripes going across your face in different, like, patterns and whatnot to defeat the algorithms. Another method is to have IR LEDs shining in your face so that the cameras can't see you, or to blank out the cameras. And then, so that was his talk, and I think this was actually his, like, master's or doctoral thesis or something. And then there was a guy who was actually from the industry, gave a talk, and basically said, that guy has no idea what he's talking about because he was doing it all based off of, like, Google's Picasa image recognition software or, like, Facebook's image recognition software. And that's just what's in the consumer realm or whatever. But in the actual security realm, it's accurate with, like, pictures that are only, like, a face of, like, 10 by 10 pixel, so, like, 100 pixels. It can differentiate between different faces. So it's super accurate. Super accurate. And they do use it to catch people. Like walking through an airport.
So part of it, too, though, is it isn't that you have a still shot in a picture frame of an individual that you're doing the facial recognition of based on this low resolution image. What it is more of, okay, the surveillance camera matched at some point, which is why we delved into that security camera to look at the full tape and footage of also other surrounding images. And so now you've got somebody who's on tape for a long instance of time. You may have only had the facial recognition for a small portion of it, and that was enough to initiate, like, okay, we have a match at this mall in a city next to where the terrorist attack took place, moments before it took place, and now you have this individual who matched well enough to trigger it, and you can follow their movements. And you see that they shopped at this store, right? Okay. Now you also see that in the suspect that you have, that you've been suspicious was the person, you now have a receipt from that store. And so it's a matter of adding more connectable dots to a history, of connecting whether or not this is the same individual throughout time that we've been following. That can make the difference in the court case. So it's not just relying on facial recognition to say this is the same person as that person, but it can be utilized to create a progression of an event that could have other physical evidence attributed to it based on being able to connect a person to different places.
Another thing that they're working on with from footage and algorithms and whatnot is gait, measuring someone's gait, and you can tell what mood they're in, who they are, if they're in a hurry or not. There's so much you can tell by someone's stride. Now, I don't know if this is actually in practice yet, or if it's still in the developmental stage, but I know it's been around for quite a while. But as for like finding this data and whatnot in the footage, so like the UK or London has more cameras per block than anywhere in the world. And the problem they have is they have so many cameras that how do you find someone in all of that footage? That's a big data problem. You have to have a huge bank of servers crunching through all of this footage.
But that's if you're crunching through the servers. So here's where that system,
that's facial recognition.
as the NASA, as the NASA mass collection system operates, so does a mass closed captioning system, which is you're capturing all this information that's totally useless because it's mundane, it's people going about the day-to-day lives. But then you're investigating, okay, on this day, on this part of town, we had a robbery. And now we start looking at the streets that can go into that part of the town and the streets that leave that part of the town, and now we've narrowed down a focus and we see, okay, here's a vehicle at about the time that we can't find anywhere else in the footage having been coming from that. Goes in, like you can drill down to time and place, and then the picture sort of can materialize of what events may have taken place based on that sort of footage. So having Big Brother in the right hands, again, makes perfect sense. Totally useful. Best way to police people without having harassing police, asking people annoying questions all the time. On the other hand, in the wrong hands, if a Senator Cruz becomes the president, right? Kind of scary to have a Big Brother state, right?
I posted a link in the chat area to something called the Homeland Security Newswire. And this is a story in February of 2011. A judge ruled that biometric facial recognition could be submitted as evidence, marking the first time such evidence has been used in a criminal trial. I'm assuming that's in the United States. The decision may or may not become a legal precedent, as it was not made by a California appellate or Supreme Court. But then further down it says, Police departments in Florida, Virginia, and Germany abandoned the use of such technology as it did not lead to any arrest while it was deployed. In Germany, officials found that the technology only had a 60% success rate in identifying people during the day, while at night it dropped to 10%. Now this is 2011,
okay. But that's
and I
also
don't know what the source is.
yeah. Also, all Germans look alike. Once they start talking, it's like it doesn't matter. Well, I think part of that is really bizarre to me. Part of that sounds like okay, facial recognition technology versus just we have you on video committing the crime. Like, where's that fine line where they're saying it's facial recognition versus we have you videotaped as you committed a crime and were captured, right? So there's something. I guess the only scenario that's popping to mind is this is a scenario in which they caught the criminal on video and the criminal got away. So it wasn't like we have you on video committing the crime and we caught you, so we know that was you. But we have a video of a criminal activity and it recognized you as the criminal even though that day you got away. How do you prove that was me based on the algorithm that says it was? So I guess there is an interesting scenario there. I wasn't actually caught at the scene of the crime. Facial recognition says it was me, but you know what? People mistake me for somebody else all the time. How can you convict me on video evidence when I got away? Because most video evidence that's used on a convicted criminal, they caught the person. The Boston bomber, they have, pictures and video, and there's a trajectory of a beginning of a chase to an end of a chase that connects them. It wasn't like they said, they picked somebody up off the street and said, you look like the guy in the video. There was a trail of connective evidence along that way.
The question is, what controls are in place as far as Big Brother, the government? That's always going to be the question. It's the question when you're talking about, Homeland Security or any other department. The need to get a court order, although maybe it's a court order if you're going to use the information in a trial. I don't know. I did see a very creepy news story maybe 6 months to a year ago. And it was this little robot, mobile robot. And it was a college. And the robot could pick out a person and go on their face. And then the robot could transmit information to other cameras so that the other cameras could know how to pick up this guy. So that if this guy walked through town, theoretically, he's being followed as he walks through town.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded kind of creepy. And what control should be in place? Do the police? I don't know. For investigation purposes, it might be okay without a court order, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky, and again, I believe it. You weight it based on the community that you live in. There's church burnings that have gone on recently. Arsons, hate crimes, which the local police said it could have been lightning. I can tell you it could have been lightning. Wouldn't have been an option for my local police in investigating this crime. So again, when you're talking the Big Brother scenario, if you are homogeneous with your local government, maybe, you can say, yeah, let's keep stuff homogeneous. But if you're not, if there's an oppression problem, a power imbalance problem, if there's a suspicion or skepticality that your local law enforcement or government is actually having your best interest at heart, then yeah, then this is a threat. This is a weapon being used against you. Just depends on your scenario.
Yeah, how do you measure the threat?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's which is the greater threat?
Oh boy.
The abuse by the government or the bad guy?
There need to be more police huggins.
Well, one of my favorite things about the capturing of the escaped prisoner. Well, there were two prisoners. First one got shot in the head. And back at the prison, I think there must have been a like, yes, okay, one more to go. And the second one got shot, and they were like, yes, only he only got wounded, didn't die. And they went, uh-oh. And then he started spilling all the corruption that was taking place within the prison, like immediately to federal officers. Right? So now there's prison officials who have been suspended, like head of the prison, something like 11 executive members of the prison authority are in deep shit water, and so they might have been hoping for a little swifter Big Brother justice, but they didn't get it. So yeah, it's always tough to tell. I mean, Big Brother is one of those scenarios where if it's in your favor, if you're Big Brothering ISIS activities in the United States, you're all for it. If Big Brother is influencing a local election in the favor of one political party versus another, totally against it. Just depends on the group affiliation.
Well, we're talking about prison. I had a story in the lineup. And what we're talking about is in the United States, and you guys talked about it last night in TWIS, you have the vaccine researcher who was sentenced to 57 months in jail for fraud and fined $7 million, which I assume is the amount of the funding he received. And the guy's name is Dong, P-Y-O-U, Han, biomedical scientist at Iowa State University. His case had a higher profile than most, attracting interest from a powerful U.S. senator. Okay, he had a senator that really forced the issue and got him to, this. Well, I don't know if it's a harsh sentence. He was forced to resign from Iowa State University in 2013 after the university concluded he had falsified the results of several vaccine experiments supported by grants from the U.S. National Institute of Health. In some cases, Han spiked rabbit blood samples with human HIV antibodies so that the vaccine appeared to have caused the animals to develop immunity to the virus. And in a confessional letter, just before the investigation was concluded, he said the subterfuge to cover up a simple mix-up that he had made years before. So we got a science researcher, and he's going to jail for almost 5 years. A lot, obviously there's scientists and researchers are a little concerned about that.
So, if he was an actual scientist, and he made some mistakes in a paper, and he realized it later on, Wouldn't you write another paper saying, hey, I screwed up in this other paper, and you shouldn't take that seriously anymore?
Well, you have to, I mean, yeah, if you made a mistake, I think that's fairly typical. It's called learning, right?
Yeah, you own it.
And to hold them to any sort of accountability, I think they should, you know, there should be an addendum onto their paper explaining that we've learned and here's more information available. But yeah, the one thing that gets me is people that kind of outside the scientific circles, you know, they'll state that, well, science said 10 years ago this, and now the truth has come out and it's this, and what were they withholding, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just learning.
Yeah, but in 10 years, the truth will come out that that was wrong, and it's another thing.
What's that?
So yeah, like, you have a result. And then 10 years later, they redo the thing, and they come up with another result. And they found out, well, the other one wasn't correct because such and such. Then another 10 years, they redo it, and they find out, actually, it's this, but it's also this. And it just keeps going. But the greater public doesn't understand that that's how it actually is supposed to work. They think it's all a conspiracy or something.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's just called learning. We all learn by failure. And our choice is either look at the best data available with the best science that we have to bring to bear on it, and we also have to be suspicious and skeptical of any data that's out there, and that's what makes it better. But we either go with the best data or we don't, and the alternative is to go with mythology and nothing. Let's follow our Bibles, you know, etc. So yeah, I'd rather go with the best data available, and when we learn more, you know, we always talk about the peer review system and how important that is, and that's our best method of doing this. And humanity does have limitations, and that limitation, you know, is always with us. So we have to, you know, it's funny, Ed and I talked at length about this a while ago, and where you do see problems in science is that normal defensive attitude that human beings take, where once you're proven wrong about something, once you've taken a defensive stance, you want to maintain that stance at all costs. And you know, Ed and I talked at length about that, and I think I find myself having the same thing, where when you're faced with data that exceeds the logic that you're bringing to bear on an argument, there's something innately human that makes us want to continue to defend, even though you know inside that your conclusions are false.
Well, that's supposed to be the difference between scientifically validated evidence and evidence validated outside the realm of science, is that peer review process is absolutely critical. And you're supposed to try and prove that you're wrong right at the first point. I mean, the first thing you do when you come up with this hypothesis is to try to prove that you're wrong. And it's only when you can't prove that you're wrong that you then go ahead and prepare your paper and do all the research and then submit it to other people who are going to try to prove that you're wrong. But when you go to, I have to say, the religious groups of people that I know, their starting point is it's right. And if somebody says something, it's right on. It's right. They're not skeptical. And it's skepticism that's kind of the key between thinking like a scientist and thinking like everybody else. I don't know.
Yeah, and it goes against our humanity, because I know Myself, I want to continue to defend. There's this urge to be right, even faced, with an inevitable conclusion. So we have to fight that if we want to continue to be successful in the future.
Yeah, this researcher, he probably would have been fine. He was fired by his university, but he wouldn't have gotten a jail sentence, except that this senator, Charles Grassley, from Republican from Iowa, and the senator said that it seemed like a light sentence for a doctor who purposely tampered a research trial and directly caused millions of taxpayers' dollars to be wasted on fraudulent studies. So he's talking about wasting of taxpayers' dollars. And yet, these are the same people who are opposed to funding NASA. And NASA, I mean, you look at all, the money that's flowed from all their research projects. They have open source as far as their patents go. They're one of, I mean, they've generated 10 times more profits than their budget. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah. That is interesting.
Okay, I guess. Justin, and let's see. What else do you want to talk? I've got a couple of stories left, certainly. I want to wait for Justin and maybe Patrick to come back. Canada Day. Dale? You see, you want to know the difference between Americans and Canadians? The Canadians are nice people. You got the Queen. You want to be nice to the Queen, right? You don't want to just run off and break away. You stay within the Commonwealth because you're nice. You want to be nice to the Queen. The Americans, we got the pitchforks. We're not going to put up with this stuff, and we're gonna fight you. And we're gonna fight you. And we're gonna kill people and everything else, and we're gonna be independent. By God, we're gonna be independent. On our 4th of July, which is coming up this weekend, we're going to be firing off fireworks and all kinds of stuff. So, what did you do on Canada Day, which was your birthday? Everybody else celebrated your birthday.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Canada Day is just kind of it's kind of a party. It really is. It's kind of like being in a gigantic frat house where nobody really cares too much about. I guess, as far as flag waving, propaganda, that sort of thing, about as deep as it gets is we respect our soldiers that have died and died for their country. And that's an important thing, but there's lots of respect for that sort of thing. But you won't see any movies about the Canadian flag and how the preciousness and the that's not there. It's a time to get out, families get together, hang out, and it's pretty low key, I think, overall. There you got fireworks.
I think in the United States, 4th of July is really present this year. Because the 4th of July came about at a time when there wasn't the Stars and Stripes that was being waved over government buildings. It was the Union Jack. And they said, you know what? That flag does not represent us. Take it down. And here we are, 170 years-ish long. And there's another flag that we're finally taking down. which is the stars and bars. We're finally taking down the Confederate flag because it does not represent us. So I think this 4th of July, I really hope that this is the message that comes across, is that we took down the Union Jack because it didn't represent us. We should also take down the Confederate flag from wherever it's still flying because it does not represent the Union.
Yeah, agreed. Could it be declared a racist symbol?
Well,
I always
so
thought it was.
yeah, I
You
mean,
see it everywhere. It's everywhere.
it's everywhere in Florida. You don't see it much in California, to be honest. I can't even remember the last time I saw it in California. But
It's everywhere in
it is,
Mississippi, Alabama,
yeah.
Tennessee. Where that is this?
I mean, this is as if you reconstituted Iraq, and yet certain segments still flew the ISIS flag. You know, no.
What's that?
No.
You can still buy the ISIS flag on Amazon, but you can't buy the Confederate flag.
Well, I mean, it's as though the British flag still flew over the United States, as though we somehow had the Queen and our money, even though we had broken away in independence. I mean, it would not make the least lick of sense. The fact that Canada has the Queen still boggles my mind. I don't know if they see this as a historical point of pride or what. But when it comes to the Confederate flag, I get it. I get this is the history of the local region aspect of it. But it was slavery was the dividing factor. And yes, the North didn't give a crap about civil rights. The North utilized the taking away slavery from the South as a way to disempower and disenfranchise it from having a power base to conflict with a growing secessionist movement down there. It was an economic issue for the North, I believe. I don't believe for a second that it was a civil rights outpouring movement that led to that Civil War.
It wasn't.
But this was still the dividing issue.
If we're talking about symbols, something that, okay, I'll say a lot of people in the southern states don't get the difference between public space and private space. For instance, in your private space, you want to hang up the Confederate flag, go ahead. You own a bar. You want to put the Confederate flag up on your bar. Yeah, you got the perfect right to do it. But if you're talking about a state flag, a public flag that's supposed to represent the entire public, then that's different. And when the public consisted of a large percentage of the population that were slaves, and you got a slave symbol on your state flag, that's wrong. The difference between public space and private space, you got they've got the 10 Commandments. Some guy donated a statue of the 10 Commandments and put it on a public property. I don't know if it was a courthouse. Well, that's public property. You can't do it. Yeah. And people don't understand that difference between public property and private property.
All right. I gotta go. Good night, everybody.
I was wondering. I can see Dale. Dale's in his nice, comfortable couch, about ready to fade away. Probably had a couple of brewskis. He's about gone. Okay.
I'm history.
And you're history. And we're all history. Okay.
I have tomorrow off, so I can really stay up as late as I want.
One quick question, Patrick,
Go home, man.
about our friend Mr. Robot. Did you see the
Yeah.
second episode?
I did, and I was totally not expecting that ending. Although that scene where he's drilling holes in the motherboard and shit, that was straight out of what they made the journalists do as they were leaving the UK. They took grinders to the motherboards, which is total, like, no tech person would ever do that. You destroy the data storage device. You don't destroy the computer, which it was so real up until that point.
Yes, yes.
And I was disappointed about that. But, I mean, I see why they put it in. I think they put it in as a joke, maybe, the people who were in know about that incident, but I can't quite tell. It's definitely Fight Club. One of my friends said it's more like Dexter, but I think it's it's more like Fight Club than anything.
Well, with the Fight Club analogy, and we don't know, I would have said that that guy seems to be like a real person, and the people that work with him seem to be real people. I love the ending. In the ending, he had to do what he did. He had to do what he did. That was the perfect ending. If he didn't do that, I would have not respected it at all. You know? But my real... it's very interesting. I'll keep following it. But do we have two evil corporations? Evil Corporation and the Evil Anarchist? Aren't these both groups evil?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why F Society moved out of their location and then now they're back.
Didn't think about it.
Also, I have a friend who was watching it, and he notices like all the really tiny little details in it. He noticed that some of the computers weren't plugged in.
Yeah, I've got an awful idea that quite often the person who you least expect to be an important person turns out to be an important person. And I expect that this guy who was the head of the Evil Corp and then got taken down, and he was so computer illiterate, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out he's an important character in F Society. And that's some kind of a setup or something.
I don't know. I think there's a lot that can happen. It's already been picked up for the second season, and we know that the first season is only 10 episodes. So we got 8 left in this one, and then there'll be another 10. I don't think it was as good as the first episode, but it was still pretty good.
I hope they can maintain the integrity. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell it because I don't know, computer hacking or whatever you want to call it. I don't know anything about it. But I hope for that community, people like you, it maintains its integrity.
It was just that stupid motherboard thing that got me. Oh, that was stupid. But I think it was more of a reference. Now that I think about it, I think it was just more of a reference to that the MI6 incident, or the airport, whatever it is. I don't know.
Okay, I will